Strap in, boys, because we got another hefty TBR for July. I feel like I need to stop calling these videos my monthly TBR, because instead what we have is a thick stack of books that I am 100% going to be making my way through, but probably not in the next like 31 days. And then every monthly TBR is just a check-in of how far I got through that stack with a handful of books that I'm adding to it for like the next month, because realistically, like I said, like we're not getting to them all in a month. But on my June TBR, I had 12 books in total. I've read 5 of those. I'm currently reading 2, and I think I'm adding 6 for July, I think. The problem is that July I anticipate being a lot like May, where I only read 3 books. They were 3 very short books and none of them were on my TBR. So like the first weekend in July, I'm going to be attending Rare, which is a romance festival that's going to be down in London this year. The plus side of that is that I do have 2 quite lengthy train journeys, and I do tend to read a lot on the train. When I get back from London, I'm going to be home for 1 day before I head back down to London again to catch a flight to Denver, where I'm going to be hanging out with Kelsey, also known as KJ Sutton, and we're going to be seeing Taylor Swift together. So it's that period where I don't anticipate reading a lot, but I am traveling solo for the first time, and because of that I anticipate definitely reading on the train to London. I have a night by myself in a hotel, I have a 10-hour flight, I have all that airport waiting time, so hopefully I will read. Really, with it being a solo journey, I guess it depends how anxious I am, but I'm gonna try my best. It could really go either way. I could read the most or I could read absolutely nothing. I don't think I'm gonna be reading much when I am actually in Denver though, so there is definitely that to consider. But this TBR is gonna be split down into 4 sections, which I think is how I did it last month. I have 3 books that I'm currently reading, and actually I've discovered that I like reading multiple books at once now. I'm still struggling with balancing them and like knowing when to pick them up, but I like that when I finish a book I'm already a couple of 100 pages into another one, and that I'm not like starting from scratch. So I have 3 books that I'm currently reading. I think I have 4 book club books, 3 Patreon picks, 2 arcs, and 1 anticipated release. I think that's what we've got going on. So I'm just going to get into it, starting with the one that I've been currently reading the longest, which I think was a currently reading for May as well, or like for June, like left over from May, which is Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. Now I think at this point last month I was only like 10 pages into this. I'm now at like the halfway point nearly. I'm 186 pages in. I don't know if I'm going to DNF this at this point, because it's not that it's bad at all, it's just that I am very clearly not prioritizing this or picking it up. I do want to give it its chance, because there's been at no point throughout the last month where this has been the main focus of my reading. This has very much been a secondary book alongside other reads, so I do want to give it like a little bit more time. But my interest, like clearly, like if it's been on my currently reading for a month, I feel like we might have an issue there. But this one is a proof that was sent to me by Bloomsbury. The release date was in May. It is a young adult queer romance story set on the backdrop of Camelot, where we have Gwen and Art, who are not Guinevere and Arthur, but they are betrothed and they absolutely hate each other. So when Gwen finds Art kissing a boy, and when Art sees that Gwen is pining after a female knight, they decide to go along with the betrothal while they also pursue their own relationships to kind of like keep that a secret and use each other as a cover. At the minute, it is exactly what I expected it to be. It's light, it's funny, it's kind of a contemporary style story on the backdrop of Camelot to give it like a little bit something interesting. And I am very much liking it when I'm reading it. It's also a very quick read, which is why I don't want to DNF it, because it's not like I don't like it. I just really don't feel like I'm giving this book its chance at the minute. One of my current reads is an intense book that I'm listening to the audiobook alongside, so maybe I'll start dipping in and out of this again to like balance that one out. But I would very much like to get through this one, because if nothing else, if I actually dedicated the time to it, it really wouldn't take me that long at all. My second current read, I am once again 200 pages in. That seems to be my sweet spot, and that is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. I recently started this in a 24-hour readathon I was doing with my patrons, and this one is actually one of my Inner Circle Patreon picks as well. It's the pick for April, I think, and it was Bex's pick. So this one is a paranormal romantic fantasy that is following a woman called Diane, who I think she works at Oxford as like is it a tenured professor? And one day in the library, she pulls a manuscript from the stacks that is super important to all of the supernatural creatures. They all start to congregate around her, waiting for her to call this manuscript again, and they're trying to convince her to give the manuscript to them. Now, from what I can gather, the manuscript contains the creation of all magical creatures in it, and everybody's kind of looking to understand their origins. One of the people who is drawn to Diana because of this manuscript is a vampire called Matthew Claremont. Now, this is a little bit different than I anticipated it being, because I didn't know that the main character knew that she was a witch, but she comes from a long line of witches. Like, she can trace her ancestry all the way back to Salem, but she actually wants nothing to do with the magic or the witchcraft, and she's very much putting it to the side and trying not to let it interfere with her life, until Matthew Claremont comes into her life and starts explaining about this manuscript and why it's important, and also his work as a scientist. I am enjoying this. It feels very much like an adult Twilight, but kind of like in a good way, especially with the way that a lot of the scenes in this book are the two characters growing closer together. And it's very much like Edward takes Bella to the woods, Edward introduces Bella to his family, and I am enjoying that. I'm really enjoying the writing and the atmosphere of this. It is a touch pretentious, which is the thing that I'm loving the least about it, but I was surprised how kind of quickly I got into this and how much I enjoyed the writing and the atmosphere, so I am eager to get back to this one. And then the final one that I'm currently reading is the one that I just started, which is Dark Age by Pierce Brown. So I'm on page 1 of this because it has the audacity to have 35 Roman numeral pages before we get to page 1 of this book, but this is book 5 in one of my favorite series of all time, which is the Red Rising saga. So another book that's going to be added to this TBR is Lightbringer by Pierce Brown, which is book 6, and this is the anticipated release that's going on my TBR. The release date for this is somewhere at the end of July. I am getting the Goldsboro edition though, so I don't expect it to arrive like on release day, but that is definitely going to be a priority for me when it arrives, especially with how like twisty I know Pierce Brown books to be. I need to get on the hype as soon as this book is in my hands. But before I do that, I have to read Dark Age. Now, this was going on my July TBR anyway because of Lightbringer's release, but like it is 750 pages, not including those 35 Roman numeral pages before you get to page 1, okay? This is the one that I'm listening to the audiobook along with reading it physically, because the audio narration of this series is just fantastic. But if you are unfamiliar with the plot of this series, we are following a young man called Darrow who is a red in a color cast system where reds are right at the bottom and golds are right at the top. So Darrow believes that his and his people's purpose is to mine for a valuable resource called helium-3, which will help everybody terraform the galaxy so that humans can escape the dying planet Earth. However, after Darrow's wife makes herself a martyr to spur Darrow into action, he actually goes to the surface of Mars and finds out that the planets have been terraformed for a long time and his people are actually being kept in slavery. So Darrow then joins a rebellion and plans to infiltrate the Golds with the intention of breaking them apart from the inside. Now that is kind of like, it's very much the start, and that story arc is mainly contained to the first 3 books, and then the second set of like 4 books is set around 15 years after the end of book 3, and this is the second book in that second story arc. So obviously I can't tell you too much about the plot of the second story arc, but essentially after the first trilogy, kind of like the battle was won but not the war, and there are many events that happen over the first 3 books that are wrapped up in a way that's satisfactory, but realistically if this was a real thing that happened, there would be lasting repercussions to these actions, and a lot of those lasting repercussions are coming up to the forefront in the second story arc. I'm a little bit nervous about this installment in particular because I know a lot of people really don't like it, and I have no idea why. Don't tell me in the comments because I want to experience it for myself, but I'm a little bit nervous about why people don't tend to love Dark Age, and I am also scared because, like I said, Pierce Brown likes his plot twists and his super dramatic impactful moments, so I feel like I'm in for a ride. Thank you very much to Beth for gifting this one to me as well. So next up we have this thick stack of book club books, which adds up to about 2,700 pages just in book club books that kind of have to be read in July. So the first one is the catch up book club book. This is the book for May and June, but I intentionally moved this down my priority list a little bit because I know the live show is only going to fall a little bit later in July than it usually does. But that one is The Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie, which is the third book in the First Law series. So I think at the minute the live show for this is going to be on the 23rd of July, just because I am away in the middle of the month. So I didn't want to finish this, like I didn't want to prioritize this for June and then it'd be like nearly a month until the live show. But this is the final book in the First Law trilogy, although the First Law trilogy is only the first part of the First Law universe, and it is a series that relies more on like themes and characters than it does on a concrete like linear plot. So in this one we are predominantly following three characters, one of which is a fencing champion and a nobleman, one is a inquisitor or like a torturer for the government, and one is a northern barbarian. There are two kind of main plot themes in this series. One is that there is war brewing, like the North are coming to war with the Union. The Union is the main country that like all of our main characters like congregate around, but the North are very much like coming to start a war with the Union, and there's also some tension brewing in the South. So the Union are very much struggling to balance this because they think like they could win a war if they were just going to war with one of these fronts, but with both of them having tension brewing, they're not so sure that the outcome is going to be favorable for them. The second main element of the plot is the magic. So this is a world where the average person doesn't believe that magic exists because it has been so long since magic has been an everyday part of their life. One of the side characters, the prominent side characters in here, is a magi. So there is definitely magic in here, but the magic is dying, and some of this, or a lot of this plot, you could potentially argue, rests on things that happened hundreds or thousands of years ago, the creation of magic, and potentially the reasons why magic is currently dying out. I'm very excited to get into this one because I do feel like it is one that's going to really tie the series together, and I feel like it's a series where when you read the last book, like everything's going to kind of like slot into place and everything's going to become clear. We also have a lot of grey morality in this series, which I really love because none of these characters are heroes, none of them are like good people. They all have massive character flaws, and I really love that, especially when it comes to like discussion and really getting into some of those like questionable morality like sections of this. So my plan is obviously to read this before the 23rd. The problem is that I'm away until the 18th, so I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to read this in July, but I'm obviously not going to miss my own live show, so this one will definitely be done. I then have my two Patreon book club books. One is technically for June, one for July, but they are technically two halves of the same book, so I'm not feeling like super pressed about the fact that I didn't get to part one in June. But they are Blood Sanctuary Part 1 and Part 2 by Vila Roth. They're about 450 pages each, so while individually they're not too intimidating, together like it is quite a lot. But these make up the third book in a political fantasy romance series. It's an indie series about the bastard daughter of the king and a Hesperine, which is a vampiric creature. So the bastard daughter of the king, Cassia, absolutely hates her father, but she maneuvers herself to the court's summer residence so that she can be there when a delegation of Hesperines arrive to renegotiate the terms of a peace treaty that has lapsed. So the Hesperines are actually a very peaceful, gentle, artistic race that just want to help people, but the humans have painted them out in a very negative light because of like the, I guess, political allegiances with other areas of the world, and also the fact that the creatures are vampiric. They're very much the antithesis of a typical vampiric creature, but the humans essentially regard them as like, I guess, how we see vampires in typical lore. So the first book predominantly takes place in a series of conversations that Cassia and Leo have in the nights leading up to spring equinox, which is the mark of like the main day of the peace treaty. And we also have, because it's quite political, there is a lot going on with like the political allegiances of Cassia's realm, and the fact that everybody regards these very like peaceful, gentle creatures as abhorrent like monsters. So it is a very slow moving series, which is why I haven't been particularly driven to pick up book 3, but I am really happy about the fact that these are in two smaller sections, because I will, even though ideally want to read both of these in July. I will still split them up into 2 halves to give myself a break because they are very, very slow, and the writing style is super formal as well. So it can take me a while to kind of get through these ones. Also, a big thank you to Amanda who gifted me part 1 and part 2 of Blood Sanctuary for my birthday this year. And then my last book club book is the June and July book for the Wheel of Time along, which is The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. This one is book 4 and it is almost 1,000 pages, but worry not. I've actually already worked out. I worked it out a few weeks ago, so I was prepared. After my mistake in May where I tried to start the Dragon Reborn at the beginning of the month, but with having stuff going on and being mentally preoccupied, I just couldn't read it. I've accounted for that this time, and if I start this the day that I get back from Colorado, I only have to read 50 pages a day to be done for the earliest possible date that we will be having the live show for this in August. So I'm sorted, like everything is in hand with this one, at least not with everything else, but with this one. So this one is book 4 in Robert Jordan's epic fantasy series Wheel of Time, which follows an epic struggle between light and dark that has happened over a series of ages, with the world slowly turning more towards the dark with every age. There is a legendary figure who is the Dragon Reborn that is reincarnated into every age, and in this series we are following this age's reincarnation of the Dragon Reborn and a handful of Tarvaran, who are people who have the ability to alter the weave of the world, which is essentially the pattern of events that will make up the age. There's a lot going on in here, and it's been a rocky ride. The 3rd book was my favorite in the series so far. A lot of people rate book 4 amongst their favorites in the series, so I am very interested to get into this one, especially after enjoying book 3 a little bit more than the previous 2 installments in the series. It's going to be a challenge, but Wheel of Time is a commitment, it's a dedication, which is why I take it chunk by chunk and day by day. But look, this is the first one that has like the super thin Bible pages, so I'm intimidated by her. But I have a plan, and the plan has got me through the last 2 books, so hopefully it won't be any different for this one. So that was all of the book club books. We're now moving on to the Patreon picks. I am still slightly behind. I still have the Patreon pick for May to read, which is The Demon King by Lucinda Williams-Chimer. This one is Brandy's pick, and it is the first book in a YA high fantasy series that I've been really interested in for a really long time. I don't actually know what this is about in terms of like the plot, but it has a lot of really classic high fantasy elements like wizards, princesses, a demon king. So I'm just like, I'm happy to go into this one blind. My only worry, which I've mentioned in previous TBRs, is that I've left it a little bit late with this being YA, but a lot of people in the comments reassured me that like this is a YA series that you can still enjoy as an adult. So I'm very excited to get into it, and I have my fingers crossed that I'm gonna love this one. And then June's Patreon pick was, is it Edge of Collapse by Kyra or Kyla Stone? This one was Debbie's pick, and from what I remember of the synopsis of this, it is a like post-apocalyptic dystopian-ish book that also has a little bit of a thriller plotline in here, and also potentially a romance. I'm also going into this one completely blind on Debbie's recommendation, but when I get to it, I think I've seen that I can get like a free ebook on like KU or Scribd or something, but if not, I will just order myself a copy when the time comes. I haven't yet because I mean I'm behind, so like I'm not getting to it right now. So now for the July Inner Circle Patreon pick. If you guys are unfamiliar with how this works, every member of my Inner Circle can recommend a book that goes into this pot. Every month I pick a book out of this pot, and say I read it in the month. I add it to my stack, my TBR, and I will get to it in the couple of months that follow it being pulled. This has just been refilled. It gets refilled in like the end of June, early July, and like end of December, beginning of January. So we are full. I have tipped everything out, mixed it all up, and put it all back in. So I'm not going to dig too deeply because I don't want to throw everything on the floor, but we're going to go for... Oh! This one's yellow, which means that it was added before the beginning of this year. Okay, this one is The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak, and it's Nazy's pick. This is like, wow, okay, I do have this, so I'm gonna get it. This has been languishing in the corner of my bookshelf because my bookshelves, my paperbacks are in alphabetical order forever. Like, to put this into perspective for you, Curtis and I will be celebrating our 8-year anniversary in November, and my ex-boyfriend's grandma bought me this book for Christmas. That is how long I've had it. So this one, everyone knows what this one's about. I do not. I know it's set in World War II in Nazi Germany. I think it's about a little girl that is trying to save the books from being burned. It's one of those where like, it's like Wheel of Time. Everybody knows about it, but like, do I actually know the synopsis? Not really. I'm expecting to cry though. I hope I enjoy this just because everyone does. I feel like I'm gonna feel uncultured if I don't. I'm a little bit intimidated by this actually, because also like, it's obviously outside of my normal genres because it's like historical fiction. I actually thought that we were at the end there, but I forgot about the arcs. So I have 2 arcs that we're going to get into this TBR. One of them was on my June TBR as well. This one is actually a July release, and that is the Pomegranate Gate by Ariel Kaplan. So the reason why this one drew my attention is that it seems very much in the vein of like it's right there, the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden, but with a different mythology. Like this one has a lot of Spanish history and also Jewish folklore included. So this one is set in 15th century Spain, and the Queen orders all of the Jews in the country to either leave or to convert. So this is following 2 characters who are fleeing and get separated from the people that they're traveling with, and I think they end up finding each other. The Pomegranate Gate that's referred to in the title, I think, is a gate between worlds, and I do believe that at least one of our characters goes through the gate. That is all I know about it. It is a little bit outside of my comfort zone because it's historical fiction, but so is the Winter Night trilogy, and I love that one, so I'm hoping that this one will have a similar vibe, but with like a different culture and country as the backdrop. And then the last book we're going to be talking about in this video is an August arc, so it's not too bad if I don't read it this month, which I'm probably not going to, but I would like to. There is intent there, and that is Masters of Death by Olivia Blake, which is one of my most anticipated releases and one that I'm really excited to get to, because the synopsis on this one just sounds so bizarre that I need to know. Like, I need to know what the deal is here. So this one it's truly bizarre and it has a lot of elements in it, but I think the crux of the plot is that an estate agent who is also a vampire is trying to get rid of the ghosts that are haunting a mansion, so she hires the godson of death, who is a medium, but he's actually a fraud, and they're trying to expel all of the ghosts out of this mansion. There is also a demonic personal trainer, a sharp-voiced angel, and a love-stricken reaper. So this book truly has it all, and I'm really excited to see how Olivia Blake brings this one together. So I do hope that I can get to this one sometime soon. As you can tell, it might be a bit of a struggle. I have had a really good reading month in June. I read 5 books off June's TBR, but I also read an additional 4 books, and I'm currently reading 3. So if I could bring at least a bit of that energy into July, I would be very appreciative. But July, I've got some stuff going on. I mean, the plus side is, after the 18th of June, which I think is when I get back from Colorado, I got nothing until September. So I'm just gonna like lock down, save my money, and do a lot of reading. But yeah, that is my July TBR. It's a big one. We're just gonna do the most. Down in my comments, let me know what the book on your July TBR you're most excited to read is. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you wanna. If you head to my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram, and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as link to my Bookish candle website, the Etsy for that, and a 10% off discount code. That's it from me today, guys. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.